The dust rose first, long before the applause did. It floated above the wooden fence of the shooting ground like a restless spirit, drifting through sunlight and settling on boots, hats, and quiet hopes. On that bright afternoon in a frontier town, built from courage and hard work, the annual shooting contest was meant to crown the sharpest eye in the territory. Men had gathered from miles away, carrying polished rifles and proud smiles. But no one expected the day to change because of a woman standing near the edge of the crowd, holding a simple lever-action rifle and a calm heart. Her name was Serafina Hale, and she stood straight despite the whispers circling around her. She had come alone, wearing a plain dress the color of river sand, and a leather belt worn smooth by years of use. The townsfolk were used to seeing her at the general store or helping with repairs at the schoolhouse, but not at a shooting contest. Some laughed softly when they saw her registration card. Others exchanged looks that needed no words. In their minds, the contest belonged to the rugged shooters, not to a woman who moved with quiet grace and steady determination. Serafina did not lower her eyes. She had grown up watching her father clean his rifle by lantern light, teaching her that skill belonged to anyone willing to practice. He had told her that courage was not loud, it was steady, it was patient. Those lessons lived inside her like a warm fire on a cold night. She had trained for months, waking before sunrise to aim at tin cans balanced on fence posts. Her hands had learned the weight of the rifle. Her breathing had learned to slow with every heartbeat. Across the field, the judges prepared their tables. At the center stood a tall wooden target frame painted with circles of red and white. The rules were simple. Each contestant would fire 5 shots. The highest score would win the prize purse and a silver badge engraved with the town's emblem. The badge was more than metal. It meant respect. It meant invitation to future events. It meant being seen. When Serafina stepped forward for her turn, a murmur moved through the crowd like wind through dry grass. A group of young men near the barrels of ammunition smirked openly. One of them whispered something that made his friends chuckle. Serafina heard them, but she did not answer. She focused on the target ahead. Then a shadow fell across the range. From the far end of the grounds came a figure so tall that children stopped playing and stared. He moved with the calm strength of a mountain. His name was Cale Ironcloud, a respected Apache tracker known throughout the region for his wisdom and steady presence. Cale was not there to compete. He had come as a guest, invited by the town council to demonstrate traditional tracking skills later in the evening. But when he saw the gathering crowd and noticed Serafina standing alone at the firing line, his steps slowed. Cale watched as she lifted her rifle. He noticed the firmness in her stance. He saw the small tremor in the breeze and understood how it could affect her shot. He understood wind better than most men understood their own thoughts. Without drawing attention, he moved closer to the boundary of the contest area. Serafina fired her first shot. The sound cracked through the air. The bullet struck near the center, but not quite inside it. A few men in the crowd exchanged satisfied looks. The next 2 shots were steadier, landing closer to the heart of the target. Her focus tightened with each breath. She could feel the tension building around her, not just in the air, but in the expectations pressing against her shoulders. Before her final shot, a sudden gust swept across the field. The target frame creaked slightly. Dust rose and flickered in front of her eyes. It was a difficult moment. The judges glanced at each other. The crowd leaned forward. Serafina adjusted her stance, but she knew the wind could shift again. She took a slow breath and prepared to aim. That was when Cale stepped forward. He did not speak loudly, did not interrupt the judges. Instead, he approached the boundary and extended his hand in a respectful gesture. His presence alone drew attention. Conversations paused. Even the men who had mocked her fell silent. Cale removed his hat and placed it over his heart. Then he looked at Serafina and spoke in a voice that carried calm authority. He offered to steady the target frame for fairness, explaining that the wind had shifted unexpectedly. Some of the judges hesitated, unsure if it was allowed. But the contest rules mentioned nothing about assistance to stabilize equipment. Cale walked to the frame with deliberate steps. His large hands gently secured the wooden structure, grounding it against the breeze. When he returned to the firing line, he did something unexpected. He did not stand behind her. Instead, he moved beside her and extended his hand once more, this time offering it for balance. The crowd watched in silence as Serafina looked at him. For a moment, she hesitated. Taking help in front of so many eyes felt risky. Yet there was no judgment in his expression, only respect. She placed her hand in his. His grip was steady, warm, and firm without pressure. With that simple connection, the tension around her seemed to dissolve. The wind no longer felt like an enemy. She lifted her rifle again, feeling the strength of his support beside her. But just as she was about to aim, a loud voice from the back of the crowd called out that this was unfair. A second murmur spread quickly. Some believed the gesture gave her an advantage. The atmosphere shifted again, turning uncertain. The judges stepped forward, raising their hands to calm the crowd. Cale did not move. Serafina did not release his hand. She kept her eyes on the target, her heart steady, but aware that the decision now rested not only on her aim, but on the town's willingness to see beyond tradition. The final shot awaited her breath. And as the wind began to rise once more, carrying dust across the field, Serafina tightened her grip, standing beside the giant Apache, whose quiet support had already changed the mood of the contest. The target shimmered in the heat. The crowd held still. The rifle was ready. The moment stretched thin, balanced between doubt and determination, between laughter and respect. One final breath remained before the shot that could redefine everything. The silence that followed felt heavier than the dust in the air. Serafina stood at the firing line with Cale, ironclad beside her, his hands steady in hers. The crowd waited, unsure whether to cheer, argue, or simply watch. The contest had always been about skill, but now it felt like something larger was unfolding, something tied to pride, respect, and the old ways of the frontier. Serafina could feel every heartbeat in her wrist. She remembered why she had entered the shooting contest in the first place. It was not for fame or attention. It was for proof. The town had grown quickly over the past few years, welcoming new settlers, new businesses, and new voices. With that growth had come quiet changes in attitudes. Some believed tradition meant keeping certain roles untouched. Others believed progress meant giving everyone a fair chance. Serafina stood in the middle of that debate without ever asking to become part of it. Her father, Gideon Hale, had raised her in a small cabin near the edge of town. He was a railroad worker who believed that strength was built through patience. He had taught her to clean a rifle carefully, to respect the land, and to listen before speaking. When he passed away the previous winter, Serafina felt the world shift under her feet. The shooting contest had been one of his favorite events. He used to say that competition revealed character. Entering it had been her quiet way of honoring his memory. Cale, ironclad, standing beside her, had his own reasons for being present in town that week. He was known across the region as a tracker who understood weather patterns, animal trails, and human behavior alike. His reputation was not built on loud speeches, but on results. Ranchers trusted him to locate missing livestock. Families trusted him to guide them safely through unfamiliar land. He carried himself with calm, dignity, and people often described him as a steady presence during uncertain times. Cale had noticed Serafina weeks earlier while passing through town. He had observed her practicing at dawn, alone near the riverbank. He had seen her focus and discipline. In his culture, skill was earned through commitment and respect. When he saw her standing at the contest today, he did not view her as unusual. He saw her as prepared. That belief guided his decision to step forward when the wind began to challenge her aim. Across the field, the judges whispered among themselves. The town mayor, Augustus Vale, adjusted his vest and frowned slightly. He valued fairness above all else, yet he understood that public opinion could influence future gatherings. The shooting contest brought visitors, trade, and attention. Any sign of conflict might affect the town's reputation. He studied Serafina carefully, noting her calm expression despite the murmurs. The young men who had laughed earlier now watched with tighter faces. One of them, Barnaby Cole, had expected to win the silver badge. He was known for his skill with a rifle and his confident stance. Seeing Serafina compete challenged his assumptions. He did not speak again, but his jaw remained set. Serafina felt the tension around her, yet she did not let it enter her breath. She remembered training in difficult conditions. She remembered practicing during windstorms, when the dust made it hard to see. Remembered the lessons about patience. Cale's presence beside her was not about replacing her effort. It was about stabilizing the moment so she could perform at her best. Still, The crowd's reaction introduced uncertainty. Some townsfolk believed the contest should follow strict tradition. Others whispered that cooperation between communities could represent unity. The frontier had always been shaped by different cultures working side by side, even when history was complicated. The shooting range had suddenly become more than a competition. It was a reflection of the town's future direction. Cale remained quiet, allowing the discussion to unfold without interruption. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were alert. He understood that any public event could carry deeper meaning. His role in town had always been to observe carefully before acting. That approach had earned him trust in difficult situations, from guiding travelers through rocky terrain to resolving disputes between neighboring ranches. Serafina felt gratitude for his steady support, yet she also felt the weight of expectation. The final shot still waited. The wind had not settled. Dust continued to drift across the field. The target frame creaked softly under Cale's stabilizing hand. Every detail mattered. The silver badge rested on a small table near the judges. Its surface caught the sunlight, reflecting briefly toward the crowd. It symbolized recognition, but it also symbolized acceptance. For Serafina, it represented more than victory. It represented validation that dedication could overcome doubt. Beyond the shooting grounds, children watched from atop a wooden platform. Some of them leaned forward, curious about the outcome. They had grown up hearing stories about skill and bravery. Seeing a woman stand confidently at the line challenged the stories they had heard. Change often begins quietly, and moments like this can influence young minds without anyone noticing immediately. The town's blacksmith, Ilawan Drake, stood near the back of the crowd. She had known Serafina since childhood. Ilawan respected anyone who worked with their hands and pursued excellence. She recognized the determination in Seraphine's posture. To her, the contest was not about gender or tradition. It was about effort and integrity. As the debate continued in low voices, the mayor raised his hand again to request calm. The rules were being reviewed quickly to ensure no misunderstanding would remain. The outcome of that review would shape whether Seraphine's cooperation with Cale would be accepted or questioned. The decision had not yet been announced, and anticipation filled the air. Serafina kept her eyes forward. She felt Cale's hand steady beside hers. The connection grounded her in the present. She thought about her father's encouragement and about the long mornings of practice. She remembered the feel of the rifle stock against her shoulder and the rhythm of her breathing during training. All of it led to this single moment. The wind shifted again, moving across the field in a slow arc. Flags at the edge of the grounds fluttered in response. Some spectators adjusted their hats. The target frame remained stable under Cale's grip, but the atmosphere was far from settled. The next announcement from the judges could change everything. Serafina adjusted her stance slightly, preparing for the shot that remained. The crowd quieted gradually, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. The silver badge gleamed once more under the sun, as if waiting for a name to be engraved. Cale gave no signal, no command. He simply remained beside her, supportive but not controlling. His presence symbolized cooperation, yet the final decision still rested in Seraphine's hands. The tension between tradition and progress lingered like the dust in the air. The judges finished their discussion and stepped closer to the line. One of them cleared his throat before speaking. The words were about to shape the remainder of the contest, but the announcement had not yet been delivered. Every face in the crowd turned toward the platform. Serafina held her breath, not to shoot, but to listen. The moment hovered in uncertainty, balanced between approval and objection. The story of the shooting contest was far from over, and the final decision remained just beyond reach. The mayor stepped closer to the firing line, his polished boots pressing into the dusty ground. Augustus Vale was a man who valued order, reputation, and stability. When he spoke, the crowd listened. Yet today, even he felt the weight of divided opinions pressing against his authority. The shooting contest had always been a simple celebration of skill, but now it carried questions about fairness, tradition, and respect. Serafina kept her posture steady as she waited for the announcement. Cale Ironcloud remained beside her, his hands still offering balance. He did not look at the crowd with challenge. Instead, he observed quietly, reading expressions the way he read tracks in the wild. He knew that conflict often begins not with loud voices but with silent assumptions. The mayor finally addressed the audience, explained that the rules allowed stabilization of equipment if approved by the judges. The decision had been made to permit Cale's assistance because the wind conditions had changed unexpectedly. His tone was calm, yet not everyone appeared satisfied. A ripple moved through the spectators. Some nodded in agreement. Others crossed their arms. Barnaby Cole stepped forward from the competitors' area. His face showed frustration, though he tried to control it. He had trained hard for this contest. In his mind, victory should belong to the most accurate shooter without assistance. He respected skill, but he believed rules should remain untouched. His presence added another layer to the tension. Serafina noticed Barnaby's expression. She understood competition. She respected effort. But she also knew that life on the frontier often required cooperation. Wind, terrain, and weather did not follow strict boundaries. She felt caught between two perspectives, each carrying its own truth. Nearby, Alain Drake spoke quietly to a small group of townsfolk. She reminded them that progress did not erase tradition. In her view, allowing Cale's support did not diminish Seraphine's ability. Instead, it highlighted respect between communities. Her words were steady, yet not everyone agreed. The judges returned to their seats, but the atmosphere remained charged. The final shot had not yet been fired. Serafina still held the rifle, her finger resting safely away from the trigger. The contest was paused while the decision settled into the crowd's understanding. Cale leaned slightly closer and spoke in a low voice meant only for her. He told her that strength is not measured by isolation. He reminded her that courage includes accepting help when it ensures fairness. His words were simple, not dramatic, but they carried weight. Serafina listened carefully. She valued his perspective, yet she also knew that public perception could shape the future. Across the grounds, whispers continued. Some visitors had traveled far to attend this event. They had come expecting entertainment and competition. Now they found themselves witnessing something deeper. The shooting contest had become a reflection of social change within the town. The silver badge glinted again as sunlight shifted across the field. It seemed almost symbolic, waiting for its rightful owner. But ownership now felt uncertain. If Serafina won, would people accept the result? If she lost, would they say it was because of disagreement? These questions hovered in the air without answers. Serafina adjusted her stance once more. She felt the texture of the rifle, the familiar grip that had accompanied months of practice. Her heart was steady, though the crowd's energy created a subtle pressure. She glanced briefly at Cale. His expression remained calm, rooted in patience. In the back rows, children continued watching. Some leaned toward their parents and asked quiet questions. They sensed that something important was happening. To them, the event was not about politics or tradition. It was about seeing someone step forward despite doubt. Their curiosity added innocence to the tense atmosphere. Barnaby returned to his place among the contestants, but he did not lower his gaze. His pride had been challenged, yet he was not a man who acted without thought. He respected fair competition deeply. His internal struggle was visible in the tightening of his shoulders. Whether he would accept the outcome remained unclear. The wind shifted again, softer this time, yet still unpredictable. Cale's hand maintained steady pressure on the frame. The structure no longer moved, but the emotional tension around it remained active. The judges exchanged quiet looks, aware that any further comment could influence the crowd's reaction. Mayor Vale cleared his throat once more and announced that the contest would resume under the approved conditions. He emphasized unity and mutual respect. His words aimed to reduce friction, but the atmosphere stayed uncertain. Agreement was not universal. Serafina raised the rifle slightly, preparing for the final shot that had paused in time. She inhaled slowly, feeling the air fill her lungs. The world narrowed to the target ahead. Cale remained beside her, not directing, not interfering, only supporting. As she prepared to aim again, a new sound traveled across the grounds. It was not loud, but it drew attention. From the direction of the town entrance came the distant approach of horses. Several riders were arriving unexpectedly. Their presence created another wave of curiosity among the crowd. The riders slowed near the edge of the field. Among them were representatives from neighboring settlements who had come to observe trade opportunities. Their timing was unplanned, yet their arrival added significance to the event. They would witness the outcome of the contest and form impressions about the town's values. Serafina felt the weight of being watched by more eyes than before. Cale noticed the change in her breathing and subtly adjusted his stance to ensure she remained steady. The connection between them remained quiet but meaningful. It symbolized trust formed under pressure. The judges prepared to confirm that the next shot would decide the contest ranking. However, they had not yet signaled readiness. The pause continued, stretching the moment further. Conversations in the crowd softened into anticipation. Serafina focused on the target again. The circles seemed sharper now, framed by sunlight and dust. She thought about her father, about the lessons of discipline, and about the responsibility she carried. Her participation was no longer just personal. It had become part of a larger conversation. Cale's presence beside her remained steady, but even he understood that the coming moments would shape opinions beyond the contest. The frontier town stood at a crossroads of ideas, and this shooting competition had revealed deeper layers beneath the surface. The wind whispered across the field once more, lifting a thin veil of dust. The crowd quieted again, sensing that action would resume soon. Serafina adjusted her grip, ready for the signal. Yet the official command had not been given. Tension remained suspended in the air, unresolved and alive. The story of the shooting contest continued to unfold, with alliances, pride, tradition, change intertwined in a delicate balance that had not yet settled. The horses that approached from the town entrance slowed to a careful walk, their riders observing the gathering with measured interest. The newcomers wore travel dust and serious expressions, suggesting that this contest now carried meaning beyond local pride. Their presence tightened the air even more, as if the whole frontier had leaned in to watch one woman stand steady at a firing line. Serafina felt the weight of every glance. She had entered the shooting contest for personal reasons, yet the story around her had grown larger without permission. Still, she did not lower the rifle, while she had trained too long to retreat from attention. Beside her, Cale Ironcloud remained calm, his posture grounded like a tall tree in open land. The connection between them was not dramatic. It was quiet and firm, built on respect rather than spectacle. The mayor signaled that the final shot would determine the outcome of the competition. The judges agreed, their expressions serious. Barnaby Cole stepped back into position, though he was no longer shooting. He would observe the last attempt carefully. His pride was at stake, yet so was his sense of fairness. He wanted the contest to feel honest, whatever the result might be. The crowd gradually formed a tighter circle around the range. Conversations faded. Even the riders who had just arrived settled their horses and turned their attention forward. Children stopped moving. Vendors paused their work. The town seemed to hold a single breath. Serafina could feel her heartbeat, steady but strong. She remembered every morning of practice near the riverbank. She remembered the sound of water flowing while she aimed at distant markers. She remembered how the wind would shift unpredictably across the open field. Those memories were not about competition, they were about discipline. Cale adjusted the target frame once more, ensuring it remained stable. He did so without drawing attention, acting as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His involvement was not about control. It was about ensuring that external forces did not decide the outcome unfairly. His presence beside her represented cooperation, a symbol of unity during a moment of division. Mayor Vale raised his hand.
Oh.
His voice carried clearly across the grounds. He announced that the final shot would begin once silence was complete. The words echoed softly and then disappeared into stillness. The wind seemed to notice the pause. It drifted across the field in a slow wave, stirring dust and brushing against hats and sleeves. Flags at the edge of the grounds fluttered with restless motion. Serafina narrowed her focus, studying the target circles in the distance. She knew that even a small shift could change the result. Barnaby folded his arms but kept his eyes on her stance. He respected skill, and he recognized dedication when he saw it, yet he also understood how quickly opinions could form in a crowd. The future of the contest, and perhaps future events in town, depended on how this moment unfolded. Serafina lifted the rifle into position. Cale did not guide her movement. He simply maintained steady contact with the frame, ensuring stability against the wind. Their partnership was subtle, like two pieces of a bridge holding firm under pressure. Around them, the audience leaned forward almost in unison. The sound of distant horse reins settling added a quiet rhythm to the scene. The riders who had arrived earlier now stood still, absorbing the atmosphere. They would carry stories about this day back to their communities. What they witnessed could influence how the town was viewed in trade and cooperation. Serafina inhaled slowly. She felt the cool air fill her lungs. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and her grip became precise. The rifle felt balanced in her hands, familiar and dependable. She had trained for this exact moment, though she had never imagined so many people would be watching. Cale noticed the subtle change in her posture. He gave no instruction, no encouragement beyond presence. His strength lay in restraint. The world around them felt suspended, like a rope stretched tight across open ground. The judges exchanged one final glance. The signal to fire had not yet been given. The suspense stretched further, building quietly. Even those who had doubted earlier now seemed uncertain of their feelings. The town was witnessing more than accuracy. It was witnessing character under pressure. Serafina adjusted her breathing pattern, recalling every lesson about focus. She had practiced shooting during sunrise, during wind, during silence. Now she combined those experiences into one controlled rhythm. The target appeared clear. The circles seemed steady, yet the wind continued to move gently across the field. A child in the front row whispered softly, but the sound faded quickly. No one reacted. The moment was too important. The shooting contest had become a symbol of respect, determination, and change. Every eye was fixed on the line. Seraphine's finger rested near the trigger, ready but patient. She would not rush. She had learned that rushing creates mistakes. The prize, purse, and silver badge no longer felt like simple awards. They represented acknowledgement from a community standing at a turning point. Cale's presence beside her was steady. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at the target and the wind, reading both with equal attention. His role in this moment was clear, yet he remained aware that reactions could still shift at any time. The mayor lowered his hand slightly, indicating that the final signal was approaching. The tension reached its highest point yet. Even the horses at the entrance seemed calm, as if understanding the importance of quiet. Seraphine's heartbeat slowed. The world narrowed to the sight line between her eye and the distant target. She felt the full responsibility of the moment. She felt the weight of expectation and the warmth of support at the same time. The wind moved again, stronger than before, lifting dust across the ground in a brief spiral. Some spectators shielded their faces. The target frame trembled slightly, though Cale's grip kept it controlled. This was the peak of uncertainty. Everything depended on stability and precision. The judges prepared to deliver the final signal. Conversations had stopped entirely. The frontier town stood still beneath the afternoon light. Serafina remained focused, ready for the decisive action that would follow the command. Her breath paused at the edge of release. Cale's hand remained firm. Barnaby watched without blinking. The riders observed in silence. The silver badge waited on its table. The future of respect, tradition, and unity hovered in balance. The signal had not yet sounded, but the entire gathering felt the climax approaching. The final shot was seconds away. The wind swirled once more. The dust shimmered. And Serafina held her aim with unwavering concentration as the moment reached its breaking point. Just before the outcome that would define the day, the signal finally came, clear and steady, cutting through the wind and settling over the crowd like a calm command. In that instant, time seemed to tighten. Serafina did not rush. She did not hesitate. Her training, her memories, and her quiet determination came together in a single, smooth motion. The rifle aligned with the target. The world narrowed to focus, breath, and trust. Cale Ironcloud kept the frame steady, his strength firm but gentle. He felt the wind shift again, yet he did not react with tension. He trusted her skill. He trusted the months of shooting practice she had completed in silence. Round them, the crowd watched with wide eyes, knowing this shot would decide the shooting contest. The silver badge and perhaps the direction of the town's spirit. Serafina exhaled slowly. Her finger moved with control. The trigger responded without force. The sound of the rifle echoed across the frontier field, sharp and clean. Birds in nearby trees lifted briefly into the sky. Dust swirled, and then began to settle. For a moment, no one spoke. The bullet traveled toward the target, cutting through the final breath of wind. The crowd followed its path as if guided by instinct. The judges leaned forward. Barnaby Cole stepped slightly closer without realizing it. The riders at the edge of the grounds held their reins tighter. Even Mayor Augustus Vale felt his heartbeat quicken. The bullet struck. A soft thud reached the line, followed by silence. Then came the sound of murmuring as the judges moved quickly to inspect the target board. Serafina lowered her rifle but did not step back. Cale released the frame only after confirming it was secure. The judges examined the circles carefully. One judge nodded. Another measured the placement again. The crowd waited, tension still lingering in the air. This was the climax of the shooting contest, the moment that would determine not only the winner, but also how fairness and unity would be remembered. Finally, Mayor Vale stepped forward with the result in his hands. His expression had changed. It was no longer tense. It was thoughtful, even respectful. He announced that Serafina Hale had achieved the highest score of the contest. A wave of sound moved across the field. Some cheered immediately. Others clapped after a brief pause, accepting the outcome. Barnaby stood still for a moment, then slowly approached the line. He extended his hand toward Serafina. There was no anger in his face now, only acknowledgement. Serafina accepted his handshake with steady grace. Barnaby spoke clearly, admitting that her focus and discipline had earned the victory. He congratulated her in front of everyone. That simple act did more to heal the tension than any speech could have done. Cale stepped slightly aside, allowing Serafina to stand at the center of attention. The silver badge was placed in her hands. Its engraved surface reflected sunlight as it rested against her palm. The prize purse was presented as well, but the badge seemed to mean more to her than any money. Mayor Vale addressed the crowd again. He praised the fairness of the judges and thanked Cale Ironcloud for ensuring the target frame remained stable during the changing wind. He explained that cooperation had allowed the contest to be judged under equal conditions. His tone emphasized unity and mutual respect. The crowd responded warmly this time. The earlier doubts faded as people recognized that the decision had been fair. The shooting contest had not been diminished by assistance. Instead, it had revealed how skill and integrity can exist together. Elowen Drake stepped forward and embraced Serafina. She whispered that the town needed examples like her, not loud examples, but steady ones. The kind that showed dedication through action. Serafina smiled softly, her eyes reflecting relief and gratitude. Barnaby returned to the contestants and shook hands with others. He congratulated Serafina again before stepping away. His competitive spirit remained, but it now carried respect rather than resistance. The contest had strengthened him as well. Cale approached Serafina quietly. For a brief moment, they stood apart from the crowd. The field around them felt peaceful now. The wind had settled, the dust had cleared, the atmosphere carried warmth instead of tension. He congratulated her with simple words. She thanked him for his support. Their hands met once more, not as a symbol of competition, but as a gesture of partnership. The connection between them had grown naturally through trust and shared focus. The mayor invited Serafina to speak to the audience. She hesitated at first, but then stepped forward. She addressed the crowd with humility. She thanked the judges, the town, and Cale for his assistance. She explained that her victory was not about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving that dedication matters. She spoke about her father and the lessons he had taught her. She shared that the shooting contest represented more than a prize. It represented opportunity. She encouraged young people, especially those who felt overlooked, to pursue their skills with patience and confidence. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. The audience listened carefully. Some nodded, others smiled. The town felt united in that moment. After the ceremony, the celebration began. Music played softly near the general store. Food was shared among neighbors. Riders from nearby settlements exchanged friendly conversations with townsfolk. Trade discussions resumed with positive energy. The frontier atmosphere felt renewed. Serafina stood beside Cale as evening light painted the sky in warm colors. The silver badge rested securely in her pocket. She looked out across the field where she had once faced doubt. Now she saw respect. The conflict that had begun with mocking laughter ended with acknowledgement and unity. The town had learned that skill has no limits when supported by fairness. Tradition and progress had found balance in a single event. Barnaby approached one final time before leaving, invited Serafina to participate in future competitions, suggesting that friendly rivalry could inspire improvement. She agreed with a smile. The shooting contest would continue in years ahead, but now it would carry a stronger sense of inclusion. Mayor Vale thanked Cale once more for his contribution. Cale responded with humility, stating that cooperation benefits everyone. His calm leadership had influenced the day without overshadowing Seraphine's achievement. As night approached, lanterns illuminated the town square. Conversations were filled with optimism. The silver badge had become a symbol of fairness rather than division. The shooting contest had strengthened community bonds. Serafina walked home under a sky filled with stars. Cale accompanied her part of the way, ensuring she arrived safely. Their steps were relaxed now, no longer pressured by tension. The romance that had quietly formed through respect felt natural and steady, like the frontier itself. She paused near her family cabin and looked back toward town. The experience had changed her confidence and the town's perspective. She had entered the contest alone, but left it supported by community understanding. The story of the old American-style shooting contest would be told for years, would remind people that courage includes patience, that fairness requires openness, and that unity can grow from unexpected moments. Seraphine's victory was not just about hitting the center of a target. It was about standing firm in the face of doubt and accepting support when it strengthened the outcome. Cale's steady hand had symbolized cooperation, not control. The happy ending rested not only in the silver badge, but in the respect earned, the relationships improved, and the lessons shared. The town continued forward with renewed trust, and the frontier spirit remained strong. Under the quiet stars, Serafina felt grateful. The shooting contest had revealed her strength. It also revealed the strength of those willing to stand beside her. The conflict had transformed into connection, and the tension had turned into harmony. The field grew silent again, but this time, the silence felt peaceful. The story closed with understanding, unity, and hope for future competitions, where skill, fairness, and respect would guide every shot fired on that historic frontier ground.